Okay, we're back again with our friend Tina Cleavelin, one of our terrific Jostens CAMs. And today we're going to talk about a really sensitive subject that in my 2 decades plus, Tina, of doing this, I've noticed that very, very few yearbook staffs plan for this until it hits them in the face.
Mhm.
And sadly and tragically, at some point, it's going to hit you in the face. And that is, what do we do about a sympathy page or a part of a page or something? Someone has died, someone has passed away, tragically, a student maybe, or a teacher, or
Mhm.
someone connected with the school, and so on. And then the thought is, well, gosh, we should do something in the yearbook for this person. So Tina, but the problem is most folks don't plan ahead for this. So Tina, let's start from scratch there. I don't know, what's the importance of such a page? And when it happens, what should a yearbook staff do? Let's give them some guidance here.
Okay, Scott, I unfortunately have had quite a bit of experience with this, and I've learned a lot. I learned this personally when I was an advisor. I was at a very large high school, and we ended up having actually two tragedies in one year. And unfortunately, the school was new enough that they didn't have what we call an obituary policy or a memorial policy. And so we had to create it. But because we didn't have it, it was a horrid situation. It was super emotional, as it should be. But if there's a plan in place, then if and when something does happen like that, you're ready to go. You know exactly what to do, you know what the policy is. And so the first thing I would encourage, I'm just going to give some tips of things I suggest. Like I would come up with a obituary policy. And I encourage schools to create a committee to determine what this is going to be. We have a basic obituary policy at Jostens that we can provide, but it's very simple. But I think if you bring in, maybe the advisor, current yearbook editor, if you have a newspaper editor, that'd be great. Any kind of a couple of leadership kids, whether it's student government, but those type of students that are very engaged in with the school, and then some teachers and maybe an administrator. You don't want it to be too big, but you want to have a good representation of the school, and then just discuss what should this look like. And I always tell staffs when I meet with them and we're talking about this, that I'm not going to set this policy for you because I don't know your community. I don't live in your community. For some schools, it may make sense to do a full page on a student. But I always ask the question, like, what if you'd have been Columbine High School? Would you want 17 full page memorials in your book? And even though you want to honor the person, or people who have passed, you also have to think about the students who are going to purchase your book. So I'm not saying that full page is bad. It's not at all. But I also know very large schools will maybe plan, a fourth of a page. You want to think about where it's going to go in your book. If this happens towards the end of the year, which ironically it usually does, you may only have the index or the last pages left. So a lot of policies state that it will go back in the index, or if it's a high school or even a middle school, it might be that it goes in the 8th grade section or the senior section. Again, up to you and your committee. But the other thing I would really recommend is you want to go to the parents, especially if it's a student, or the family if it's a teacher or somebody involved in your community, and ask them if this is something they want. Because every once in a while, a family may be really private and it's something they don't want. I'll be honest with you, I've never ever had a family turn it down. In fact, most of them have come back, and even staffs I've worked with, the family has said it was really healing for them. But it gave them an opportunity to also, be involved in photos that are going to be included and the copy that's going to be included. I think it's also important to go, especially if it's a student, to, this individual's friends and let them be a part of it. If it's a teacher, maybe, or a coach, maybe it's the, kids are really, super close to them. So lots of opportunity, but number one, that policy is going to make make a very horrible situation bearable.
And folks, the key word there, policy. You've got to make a plan.
Mhm.
And this is not an if. This really is a when. I
Yeah.
mean, Tina, I think this at some point, every yearbook, I'm talking from elementary all the way up, college, so on. This happens. I mean, goodness, I could get philosophical. It's part of life. And to be ready. Now, hopefully, a Columbine, that was in Colorado, I guess not far from you.
Not far from me.
I'm thinking Marjorie Stoneman Douglas down in Florida a couple of years ago. I mean,
Hmm.
what a horrible, terrible situation. Yeah, that must be extremely tough. I'm thinking, a car accident or someone has a disease of some kind or cancer or something like that. Um, Now, Tina, before I joined Jostens, I was a journalist. All right, you were a former yearbook advisor. Um, when do you go talk to the family? I can't imagine you do that like right away. I mean, is there a rough amount of time? Like, okay, maybe it's safe now to go talk to them.
That's a great question, Scott, because unless again this happens way at the end of the year and you're trying to get it in the book and there's really a time crunch, you probably are going to have a little bit of time to do this. And and also just speaking personally from losing my sister, I, you don't really need that right at the beginning. But I think there, within probably a couple of weeks, you can go to the um, go to the family. I think it's also important. Sometimes I think a staff could be personally involved. Like I had a staff this year, they lost an editor and it was really, really difficult. And so they weren't even ready as a staff to work on this module until, a couple of weeks. It was so raw. And, after the service had happened and, gave them a little bit of time, then they were ready to tackle it. And I think that's something, we should consider. Like I would definitely let the service be over, let the family deal with all of those things, and then, approach them. And I would, a phone call, an email, depending on however reach out to parents, or friends, and just tell them, we want to honor your loved one, and we're just, first of all, want to make sure that this is something you want to include. And if so, do you want to be involved in it?
As to wrap up, let me mention a number of years ago, I had a situation where a yearbook was wrapping it up. They were turning in their final pages, and something terrible happened. A student died in a tragic accident. And we pulled strings to make sure that they got a good sympathy page in for that student.
Good.
So if you're watching and that happens like at the very, very end, trust us, we'll pull some strings to make sure that that gets in there. All right.
We
So we don't
will.
want you like stressing out over a deadline or something. We'll find a way to make it happen. Okay.
Good comment, Scott. That's so true. That's what we do. We're the Jostens family. We take care of each other.
All right, Tina, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.